So Parshas Vayakhel. So let's start the first mimer. Vayakhel Moshe's Koladas Bnei Yisrael. Moshe gathered all the Yidden. Vayemer Aleim. Sheishes Yamim Te'aseh Malacha. So 6 days Malacha should be done. Uvayim Hashvi Yeh Lachem Kodesh Shabbos Shabbos Hashem. And the 7th day should be holy. Shabbos Shabbos Hashem. It's a Shabbos of Shabbos to Hashem. So lahavin ma'amir azal al zeh lo manismach Parshas Shabbos l'mlechas hamishkan. The Gemara says, what's the connection between Shabbos and the Mishkan? So the Gemara says, because this is the basis, the foundation of all of the laws of Shabbos. When you look at Shabbos in the Torah, so it just says not to do work. But what is work? What are you not allowed to exactly do on Shabbos? So all of that is understood and deduced based on what was done in the Mishkan. Everything that was done in the Mishkan, all the Aveda, all the details of creating the Mishkan, building the Mishkan, that is what constitutes work. And all those things you're not allowed to do on Shabbos. So the Gemara connects, because the Torah puts Shabbos, the commandment of Shabbos, right next to the commandment of the Mishkan. So therefore, we learn from the Mishkan. We learn about Shabbos, and all of the laws of Shabbos come from that. But the fact that they're connected, and the fact that we learn one from the other, must be that there's a deeper connection between Shabbos and the Mishkan, not just a legal aspect, that we learn the halachas of Shabbos from the Mishkan, but that there's a connection. There's the depth of Shabbos, what Shabbos represents and what Shabbos really is the same inyan as the Mishkan. It's the same idea as the Mishkan. So the Alter Rebbe is asking, we need to understand what is that they both share. Now, once we understand they both share the same inyan, so then, of course, from there branches out also the fact that we learn out all the laws of Shabbos from the Mishkan. That's the first question. Gam tzorich lahavin, we also need to understand mipnei ma betzivi HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'Moshe Rabbeinu alav hashalom b'Parshas Truma Tetzaveh nemer tchila meleches klei HaMishkan dahainu ha'aron v'ashulchan v'amneira v'achar kach meleches HaMishkan atzmei hein ha'yiriyah shel HaMishkan v'achar kach l'basoif hakol nemer b'Parshas Kisisa ach hashabseisa tishmeru. So first, the commandment of the Eibishter to Moshe Rabbeinu in Parshas Truma and Tetzaveh, it says the Kli HaMishkan, the vessels of the Mishkan, like the Aron, the Shulchan, and the Menorah, and then afterwards it says the Yerias of the Mishkan, the Mishkan itself, the covering over of the Mishkan, the walls of the Mishkan, and then only at the end in Parshas Kisisa, last Shabbos, we learned about the mitzvah of Shabbos. So arihikdim hakelim, v'achar kach ha'yeriyos, v'achar kach shmir Shabbos. So that's the order. Uvitzivi Moshe Rabbeinu alav hashalom l'Yisrael. But when Moshe Rabbeinu commanded the Yidden, dahainu b'Parshas Zu Vayakhel Moshe hafach haSeder. Here the Seder was reversed. Sha'amalem tchila shmir Shabbos, v'achar kach meleches HaMishkan, v'achar kach hakelim. First, he starts off as the beginning of our parsha of the mitzvah of keeping Shabbos, then the Meleches HaMishkan, and then the Kelim. Meleches HaMishkan meaning the building the walls, the Mishkan itself, the outer aspect of the Mishkan, which is the walls, the covering over the Mishkan, and then only afterwards it says the kelim. It only says the vessels. So this is two questions that we have. So the second question we'll only answer at the end. But first we need to understand what is the Mishkan in general. What is the Mishkan? The Mishkan, we said, is two parts to it. The Yerius, the outer aspect of the Mishkan, and the Kalim of the Mishkan. And both of those represent also in Avodas Hashem, in serving the Eibusha, they represent Torah and mitzvahs. The Mishkan itself represents mitzvahs, and the Kalim, individual Kalim in the Mishkan, they represent Torah. That's what we're going to say now. So what is the depth of the mitzvah of making a Mishkan, the Beis HaMikdash? So we see from what it says, V'shachanti b'seicha, that I would dwell in them, b'seicha l'nemer l'b'seicha, that the Mishkan is a intermediary, is a process of the way that we bring the Eibusher Hashem to dwell amongst us. That's the Mishkan is through the Mishkan Hashem dwells amongst us. The Hainu b'seichel Sham Yisrael Yishkin Kvei Davai Yisbarach Haidei HaMishkan. V'achshav Gamkein Hu Haidei Yiskim B'Torah Mitzvahs. So now that we don't have a Beis HaMikdash, so also through learning Torah and mitzvah and doing mitzvahs, so also that's the purpose of Torah and mitzvahs, is that the Eibusha should reside amongst us. Sha'Torah he can make b'chinas Kli HaMishkan, v'amitzvahs he b'chinas Yerius HaMishkan. Now, what's the connection between Torah? What's the connection between Torah and the Kli HaMishkan and the vessels of the Mishkan and mitzvahs and the Mishkan itself? So the Yerius HaMishkan. So the Alter Rebbe says, "Ki ha'idei mitzvahs nasa b'chinas levushim lenefesh." Mitzvahs, through doing a mitzvah, so the mitzvah creates a levush for the nefesh, a garment of the soul. As it says in the pasuk in Yeshaya, "V'holach lefanecha tzidkecha, kvod Hashem ya'asfecha." Tzidkecha refers to the mitzvahs, the righteous things that you do. Kvod Hashem ya'asfecha, the glory of the Eibusher surrounds you, gathers you in, just like a garment surrounds the person. So that's the idea of mitzvahs. And this is the same idea as the Yerius of the Mishkan, which is also makif, which surrounds. That's what creates the outer perimeter. The body of the Mishkan is created by the Yerius, the walls and the Yerius. And Torah is b'chinas mazon l'nefesh. Torah is we know is as opposed to levush, which is a garment. So Torah is a mazon. Torah is sustenance of the soul. The Torah, David HaMelech says, is b'seich mei, is within my innards, which is like food when it's being digested and consumed within the person. That's what Torah is, b'seich mei. V'zeh b'chinas Kli HaMishkan shein b'chinas pnimiyim. And that's the Kli HaMishkan, the vessels of the Mishkan, which is pnimiyim, which reside the gashmis, the physical, the kelim of the Mishkan is within the Mishkan itself. So Alter Rebbe doesn't explain the function of Torah and mitzvahs other than labeling them. We have other places we've learned the idea of levushim. Why is a neshama need a levush? And what does it mean that the mitzvah is a levush? In other words, what does the levush accomplish? But over here, the Alter Rebbe is labeling what is Torah and what is mitzvahs, just to understand that the Yiriyas HaMishkan, is the levush, and the kelim of the Mishkan are like mazon. The Alter Rebbe is going to explain here. We said that Torah and mitzvahs, just like the kelim and the Yiriyas, what is the goal? What is what are we trying to accomplish? What we're trying to accomplish is that the Eibishter, godliness, should reside within us. B'soicham. So in order for that to happen, you need both. You need the levush and you need mazon. You need Torah and you need mitzvahs. You need the Yiriyas and you need the kelim. So to understand that better, so here the Alter Rebbe is going to explain the different levels of divinity, of godliness, and how that permeates, how that resides within us, and which resembles the idea of levushim, and which resembles the idea of mazon. L'havin zeh yesh lahagdim l'havin mashakasu ani avaya leishanisi. It says in the pasuk that I Hashem leishanisi, I didn't change. Which means, what does it mean Hashem didn't change? She'ein bo yizbarach shum shinui v'hispilus chas v'shalom ayidei briyas ha'olam. The Eibishter didn't change. There's no effect whatsoever as a result of creating the world. Which we can say in one word, the Eibishter transcends. He transcends creation. So therefore, if he transcends, meaning there's no change, the Eibishter before the creation and after the creation. Just like the Eibishter was the only one before the world was created. So the same is true after. It's not the pshat that now that the world was created, so now you have the Eibishter and something else. There's no something else. When we say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, the Eibishter is the only one. There's nothing else besides Hashem. Ein od milvado. So Ein od milvado is another way of saying that is Ani Havaya Lo Shanisi, that there's nothing else, that there's no change. Because if there was a change, and it's not, then we can't say Ein od milvado. There's nothing else besides Hashem, right?
Isn't Ani Havaya Lo Shanisi stronger than Ein od milvado?
It could be it's stronger in the sense that it brings out a deeper aspect, but you can't have if you don't have Ein od milvado, so you can't say Ani Havaya Lo Shanisi, right? If you have oid, then you can't say then that's obviously a shinui. Before there wasn't, now there is. So koydem and achar briyas ha'olam is the same. Like it says, atu koydem shnivra elam, atu mishnivra. We say in davening. Ratzu leimer bezeh she'ein briyas ha'olam poel b'shum shinur chas v'shalom. That it doesn't cause any change by the Eibishter. And the Alter Rebbe goes on and explains that v'hainu lefi sha'achai yisanim shechmani yizbarach la'achis ha'olamis. The chai there's a world. Hashem created a world. We're not saying that Hashem didn't create a world. It says Bereshis bara Elokim. It says Shemayim v'saaretz. Hashem created a world. So the chayis, but what is the cause of the creation? Is the chayis of the Eibishter that created the world. So klolos erv'chayis zeh hurak b'chinas ha'ara ba'alma m'husav atzmos yisbarach. So all of that, the chayis is only ha'ara, is only a ray. Sheheir v'himshech mimenu al derech mashal ha'ara ba'alma. That the Eibishter, from the Eibishter shines a ray, and through that, v'yidei zoi ha'ara hu yisbarach mechayes and mahaves and mayan liyesh. So through that ray, the Eibishter creates and gives life to the world, brings it into existence from nothing to something. Aval hu yisbarach muhusav atzmosei. But the Eibishter himself, miruma u'misnase megeder almin. The Eibishter is completely transcends the definition of Olam. V'zeh shenikra HaKadosh Baruch Hu shu Kadosh Umuvdal. And that's why Chazal, they use the term when they refer to Hashem, right? Hashem has different names. So they refer to as Hashem as HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh means Hashem transcends. He transcends the world. In other words, with the name HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they were expressing the idea of Ani Havaya Leishanisi, that there's no change by Hashem. Because Hashem transcends the world. So, the Alter Rebbe here is giving us to understand what does it mean that the Eibishter transcends the world. There's no change by the Eibishter. So, in order to understand that, in order to imagine that, the Alter Rebbe uses the term ha'ara. It's only a ray. What is the Alter Rebbe bringing out with that? That's a mashal. It brings out the depth of this idea that there's no change by the Eibishter. Chassidus talks about the difference between Ur and Shefa. Shefa means that there's a flow of something. So, in an abstract, in a physical sense, when you say a flow, you take water and you're pouring it. You have water in a cup, and you're pouring it to another cup. So now the water that is in the first cup is now leaving one place and going into another. Or in a more abstract sense, when we say that there's a flow, when you have a teacher and a student, so the teacher is giving over an idea, an insight to the student. So now here we don't say that now that he gives over the idea to the student, so now it leaves the teacher, now he doesn't have it anymore. So here we understand the idea of Shefa in a more abstract sense, that the teacher is now being engaged. He's engaged with the student, and being engaged with the student, so now he has to tailor the idea that he has so that now the student can understand. And while he's tailoring the idea that the student should be able to understand, so he's now engaged in that, and he can't be doing something else. He can't be thinking about the concept the way he wants to understand it, the way he needs to discover and delve deep into it, because he's now being engaged with giving it over to the student. So we call that Shefa, because the idea that he has, the idea that's being disseminated, is now being tailored, is being fitted to the recipient. So in that situation, so you have a shinui. What's the shinui? What do we mean the shinui here? Well, the shinui means that now that he's tailoring it. He's being measured now. The idea is now being measured to be able to be received by the recipient. So, as opposed to when we say so a ray, what do we mean when we want it? What do we mean when we use the term the mashal means that it's not. It's there. It's not being tailored. He's not being engaged in this mashal of the teacher and the student. It's not being engaged. A mashal of the Hillel Parsha brings a mashal of He says when someone, because this is abstract concept, we're using terms which could be misunderstood because of the physicality sometimes of things. But when he uses a mashal, when someone davens, when a tzaddik davens, and he's davening in here, Chassidim describe the Frierdiker Rebbe when he would daven Rosh Hashanah, and you hear even when they retell over the way the Frierdiker Rebbe used to daven on Rosh Hashanah, the Rosh Hashanah night. So when they tell it over, they choke up because the depth of the davening and the emotion, etc., was so deep that it has a very everlasting and deep effect. But so the mashal that Reb Hillel says is when a tzaddik is davening and a pashat yid walks by, so he's affected by the davening of the tzaddik, but it's not to say the tzaddik's not davening for him, for the yid that walks by, and the yid that walks by has absolutely no understanding in what the depth of the davening of the tzaddik, but he's being affected by it. That's the means that there's an expression that takes place that automatically causes the effect that it has on the other person, but not that he's engaged in giving over something to him. So the idea of is it allows that the tzaddik davens and it has an effect, but it doesn't take away. He doesn't have to measure what he's doing to tailor it in any way to the recipient. That's what we mean when we say means that it's an expression, it's a shine, it's a ray, but it's not. It doesn't take away from. It doesn't have the same dynamic as shefa, where shefa it requires the giver and the recipient. It requires the giver to engage. That's why we say one of the definitions of one of the Chassidus talks about this in great length and depth, that is automatic. It's automatic because it's not tailored, it's not fitted to the recipient. So when we say that the Eibusher created the world in a manner of so that automatically is suggesting that there's no change by the Eibusher. Just like there's no change when we say one of the mishalim that we use when we talk Be'er, we use the sun. Sometimes we use the sun, sometimes we use the nefesh. Again, we're talking about such abstract ideas that each mashal brings out a depth of understanding so that we can appreciate it. The mashal of the sun we say is we use the mashal of the sun to understand air, but the sun has no choice. It's not that the sun chooses to shine. The nefesh chooses. So from one aspect, we use the mashal of the sun to understand that it happens automatically, and that brings out that aspect of air. But it's not a good enough mashal because we want the Eibishter chooses. It's not that it's automatic. He has to be shine to shine and express. So that we use the mashal of nefesh. The mashal of nefesh breaks down also, so we need the mashal of the sun. Over here, the Alter Rebbe, that's not going into all the details of the inyan, but I just wanted to bring out the nekuda. The point is that in order to appreciate what does it mean that there's no change, means that the Eibishter is he's not affected because we see that the expression of that like which there's no effect. Another thing brings out in other places also that the light of the sun is not affected whether the sun shines in a palace or in a garbage dump. The air itself is not affected. So that's what the Alter Rebbe is saying. And the idea of the Eibishter himself, when we talk about the Eibishter himself, Ani of Hashem, so for that we say Lo Shanisi. Lo Shanisi, there's no change, meaning to say he transcends. It's beyond this the idea of Shefa. It's the gather of Ur. So seemingly based on this that we said now, that the idea of the godness is coming in the way we describe it, is in a way of So what does it mean? V'ata mechayes kulam. You give life to everything. You give life seems to suggest that that it's tailor made to each chayes, to each creation. V'ata mechayes kulam. So the Alter Rebbe says the chayes, that which we say is given the chayes, it comes that's more defined and tailored to each and every single nivra, to each and every creation. That's malchus yisbarach. That comes from the Eibishter's kingship. So we have, just to say outside, we have three definitions, and they all come together. Which is what we talked about before. You have malchus and shem, name. Each one of those brings out. We introduced that it brings out that he's not engaged. Unlike Shefa, unlike a teacher and a student, as we said before. And then you have Malchus. Malchus also, when we talk about the attribute of Malchus, so it's not a separate aspect, a separate koyach, a separate tchuna. So you say the nefesh is being defined in seichel, in midas. Malchus, what is Malchus? Malchus is only, the idea of Malchus is only that that he is being sovereign over someone else. But it's not defining, the nefesh itself is who is he? That Malchus doesn't define that. Malchus is more defining what he does, or the dynamic, the relationship between the king and the subject. That he's sovereign, but doesn't define him. What defines him is his seichel and his midas. that defines the person. But the fact that the person is sovereign over someone else, a king is sovereign over someone else, that doesn't define him. That tells you more what he's doing, or the state of how he is interacting with what is the dynamic between him and the other person. And the same is idea of shame. Shame is also, what is shame? Shame is a name. Shame is not connected to the person himself. Meaning to say that if a person was the only one, he wouldn't need a name. Name is only because of his interaction with someone else. So he calls him, so he's able to refer to him. So all of this brings out the idea that the Eibishter himself is transcendent. How does the Eibishter interact? How does he interact with the world? Is in the way of Malchus, shame. So v'ata mechayes kulam, when it talks about, we just finished saying the concept of so when it says v'ata mechayes kulam, which means that the Eibishter is now kaviyachal engaged, that's referring to Malchus. But just like Malchus is an external. It doesn't define. It's not the individual itself. It's not defining the individual himself. So the Eibishter's engaged with the world. V'ata mechayes kulam. That's the Malchus of Hashem. That's what the Alter Rebbe says. V'agam shenemar v'ata mechayes kulam. Hine iker chayusa mikiyumam hurak m'chinas ha'ara ba'alma kina. It's only, all of this that we said is only ha'ara ba'alma, is only the definition of and v'ara zu hi b'chinas malchusi is barach. That's the malchus. K'ma shekasa malchuscha malchus kol ha'olamim. Shechayis kol ha'olamim hu b'chinas malchuscha. Dahainu, shemashu niku hu yisbarach melech aleim mizeh atzmahem chayim v'kayomim. So that, where does their chayis come from? Their chayis comes from the Eibishter as melech. We have to go, so we'll continue our Mr. Hashem on Thursday.
Thank you.
We just really not even scratched the surface.